If you're into big and boxy four-wheel drives, then you'll know that they're a bit like Halley's Comet, as in a new one only comes along once in a very, very long while, which makes this a bit of a golden age for these big brutes because not only are we getting new ones, but we're getting a whole bunch of them, and all pretty much at the same time. There's a LandCruiser 300 series that launched a couple of years ago. The new Prado is just around the corner. The Y63 Petrol, that's just been revealed. And that's without even mentioning the litany of Chinese rivals, either here or set to arrive sharpish. But this Lexus GX is probably my favorite, at least so far, or it was on its international launch, where I loved its big engine, its tech-filled cabin, and its brutish looks. Sure, it drinks like a sailor on shore leave, but you can't win them all. Anyway, I've been desperately keen to get this onto Australian roads to see if those fond memories hold up. So if you're in the market for a new four-wheel drive, then stick around while we figure out if the Lexus GX should be on your shortlist. Believe it or not, this shiny beast is actually the entry-level Lexus GX, the 550 Luxury, which lists at 116 grand before on-road costs. Now be warned, that translates to more like 128 grand on the road, according to Toyota's website here in New South Wales. And it's also a fair way above the entry-level Prado, the GX, which lists at more like 72,500. But something premium, I guess. Plus you do get a whole lot of stuff and a whole lot of engine for your money. The entry-level GX nabs 20-inch alloys, including a full-size spare, which is mounted under the car so it doesn't eat into any of your boot space. There's also LED lighting all around, including DRLs and fog lamps. There's front and rear scuff plates, roof rails, and a powered tailgate, which is hinged at the top rather than at the side. Inside, there's seating for 7, all wrapped in a sort of faux leather, heated and ventilated front seats and heated window seats in the outboard seats in the second row. There's 3-zone climate control, a 14-inch central screen with wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, a 10-speaker stereo, a 12.3-inch driver screen, a head-up display, and wireless device charging. Then the Sport Luxury, that's the most expensive GX at $128,200 before on roads, and it gets 22-inch wheels, adaptive suspension, better lighting, and a fixed glass roof with a sunshade, super important in Australia. Inside, there's a 21-speaker Mark Levinson stereo, leather seats with a massage function for the front row, and a digital rear view mirror, amongst other goodies. Then smack bang in the middle of those two is the Overtrail, which lists at $122,250 and is designed to be the most off-road focused model of the lot. It rides on 18-inch alloys with special off-road rubber. It gets off-road designed bumpers, and there's provisional mounts should you want to install rock rails. There's also an electronic rear diff and what Lexus calls kinetic dynamic suspension, which automatically disconnects the front and rear sway bars for serious wheel articulation when off-roading. Inside though, it's a 5-seat only offering with what Lexus calls ultra suede seat material and a unique design treatment in the cabin. I reckon they have nailed the design brief with this Lexus GX, especially in this deep graphite black. Now it's worth pointing out there's actually 2 looks at play here. There's the Overtrail, which gets smaller alloys, off-road rubbers, unique bumpers, and more aggressive flares. But this is the other one, which gets more of a street style, and I reckon it looks ace. It's just a big, blocky SUV with nothing over the top, no crazy design flourishes. But there are a couple of things that I do really like. The first is this grille is massive, but it's blacked out, which kind of minimizes it a little bit, and this DRL treatment looks super sharp during the day or at night. So inside it feels like a pretty tech-filled and premium space, and while some of the cabin materials aren't the softest in existence, they do feel hard wearing, which is probably just as important in a car that you might end up taking off-road. Elsewhere there's these huge cubbies and wireless charging everywhere you look. They really do seem to have nailed the interior ambience in here. I really like it. The engine and transmission section for this is actually pretty straightforward because you get to choose from exactly one powertrain. This one gets a 3.5 litre twin turbocharged V6, pairs with a 10-speed automatic, sends its power to all 4 wheels, of course. Now power outputs are 260 kilowatts and 650 Newton meters, which makes this 2.5 ton beast feel pretty sprightly. I don't have an official 0 to 100 kilometer an hour time, but if you are trying to break a land speed record in a car this big, well, maybe don't. The GX is a big truck, though admittedly not Lexus' biggest, stretching just over 5 meters in length, just over 2.1 meters in width, and just over 1.9 meters in height, and it rides on a 2.85 meter wheelbase. Only the Overtrail is the 5-seater, with their more road-focused trims getting seating for 7. It also means the Overtrail gets more boot space, while this one gets 291 litres of room behind the third row, growing to 1,138 litres and 2,177 litres when you start lowering the levels. All models weigh in excess of 2.5 tons, by the way, and will tow 3.5 tons braked. And for reasons known only to Lexus, there are actually 12 cup holders in this car, which means every passenger can bring exactly 1.7 drinks with them. Anyway, the big question I always have with 7-seaters like this is, what's life really like in that third row? So I'm going to show you, but first, because they're electronic, I'm going to put them back up just so you can see how long that takes. So that process has now begun, and while it's happening, I'll tell you that in this middle row, there is ample room to sit behind my own 175 centimeter drive position, lots of leg room, lots of headroom, and the seats are now in place. So to drop this, you pull the handle. It doesn't just drop, but folds right out of the way. And because of the step here, getting in actually isn't that big a deal. There's not a lot of grunting. You can see there's actually a fair bit of room for an adult to sit comfortably, at least one my size. My knees aren't hitting the seat in front, my head's not hitting the roof, and I could actually spend some time back here in something approaching comfort. It really is a pretty good third row for a 7-seater. Elsewhere back here, there's the cup holders that we mentioned. For some reason, the 2 backseat riders get 2 each, but there's also USB ports and roof vents to keep things cool. It also gets a proper household style plug in the boot, which is especially handy when you're off-roading, especially if you need to plug in tire pumps or anything else. Now be warned, it is thirsty, this GX. Keep in mind it's fitted with a pretty big 80-litre fuel tank, and when we picked it up, it was almost full and forecasting a total driving range of less than 400 kilometres. Now the official figure is more like 12.3 litres per 100 combined, but I don't think you've got much chance of seeing that too often. In the city, I reckon you're more likely to see that number start with 19. Okay, so driving, and first things first, this isn't a proper off-road review. We're in the city here, and look, we'll have to give it to Marcus Crafty Craft or some other bush bashing weapon to really put it through its paces, probably in an over-trail edition. So this is going to more focus on what it's like to live with in suburbia. You know, the kind of car that you might take on a weekend adventure every now and again, but does kind of family duties during the working week. And the very first thing you notice about this car is that it doesn't feel overly truck-like, which is really refreshing, and I think is kind of symptomatic of this new breed of tough off-roaders. You no longer have to feel like you're piloting a truck around to get a bit of off-road capability. This thing has proven really pretty comfortable in town. Now don't get me wrong, it doesn't feel ultra dynamic. There's still plenty of play in the steering wheel, but it equally doesn't feel like you're driving something super agricultural either. It feels comfortable, it feels premium, it feels pretty plush. And the other thing I absolutely love about this car is its twin turbocharged V6 engine. I know that's not the greenest thing to say in 2024, but by gosh, does it deliver a whole lot of power. It is so smooth and so effortless, and the way that it pairs with that 10-speed automatic is really pretty seamless too. The gear shifts are barely noticeable as it just goes about its work. But when you do need to put your foot down, say you need to overtake or get around a traffic light, there is plenty of power underfoot. Yes, it builds a little bit slowly as those turbos spool, but there is plenty there when you need it. Even if, as I said earlier, it doesn't feel anything like a performance car, it's not lightning quick in a straight line. But I guess above all, it just feels easy. The tech is big and clear and it works. The car itself is comfortable. There's lots of little thoughtful touches, up to and including the way that you climb into the third row, which is super easy. Once you're back there, there's plenty of space there as well. And I guess the one thing I've been really left wondering is, do you really need something bigger than this? Do you need a Lexus LX or a Toyota LandCruiser 300 series? I think for most people, and really almost everyone, this is enough car with enough space and that can do enough to meet anything you might need it to do. But there are, of course, as always, some downsides. One of them is that it is kind of loud in the cabin, and not necessarily from the exhaust, or not just from the exhaust, but just from that big engine going about its work as well. It's not all that calm and cosseting in here. You can definitely hear things happening when you put your foot down. It's also plenty thirsty, and I know you expect that from an engine this big and a car this big, but again, in town, we've been getting 19, 20 litres per 100 kilometres, and with fuel prices the way they are at the moment, that's pretty expensive. The other thing about this car that makes it really easy to live with in the city is just how easy it is to see out of it. I mean, honestly, for a car this big, it's really impressive. The wing mirrors are massive and they show heaps of the road either side. The view out of the back is really good as well. You can see everything out of that rear view mirror, and there's all sorts of little safety systems, which we'll touch on in a moment, that help you see beneath the car when you're parking as well. So I guess in short, if you're a one car bigger family that needs something that can do all the weekday stuff and get you far and wide on the weekend, and tow as well. And the Lexus GX will tick all of those boxes. Just make sure you have deep fuel pockets too. The Lexus GX has a long list of standard safety stuff, which I won't bore you with here. And while it hasn't been ANCAP crash tested yet, I'd be surprised if it didn't score a pretty strong rating. But it does have one feature that I do want to show you. Technically, it's an off-road camera, so you can see where the wheels are when you're climbing a mountain and things like that. But it's also plenty handy in the city, especially if you're in any way nervous about driving a bigger car. You activate it by hitting the little view button here and the camera pops up. But the coolest view is this one, which kind of makes the Lexus itself disappear. In fact, it's so detailed I can see the leaves that I'm driving over on the road below. Just makes it really easy to see like parking spot markings when you're trying to park at a shopping center or whatever. But it also just makes you feel a bit more comfortable whenever you're maneuvering a really big car around kind of tight inner city locations. The GX will be covered by Lexus 5-year unlimited kilometer warranty, which is good. And there's 5 years of cut price servicing, which is also good. Less good is the fact that the service intervals are 6 months or 10,000 kilometers, and each will cost you $595. So if you do the math, you're looking at almost $1,200 a year to keep this on the road, or almost $6,000 over 5 years. The Lexus GX does exactly what it says on the tin, plus it's the launch of a new era of off-road performance for Toyota's premium arm. And while the price gap between this and the Prado might minimize cross-shopping there, I wouldn't be surprised to hear of people comparing this to the bigger LC300. Now remember, to read my full review on the Lexus GX and thousands of other cars, head on over to carsguide.com.au.